Hey there, and welcome to the Reclamation Room. I'm Ashana, and I'm so glad you're here. This is a space for women reclaiming themselves after narcissistic abuse. If you've ever felt like you were too much, not enough, or both at the same time, you're in the right place. I created this podcast because I know what it's like to lose yourself in overgiving, overperforming, and still wondering why it never felt like love. I've walked through trauma, toxic relationships, and the long road of self-reclamation, and I'm here to walk with you. In this podcast, we'll explore what it means to come home to yourself after the confusion and chaos of narcissistic abuse. Some episodes will be solo, others will include guest interviews. All of them will be honest, grounded, and deeply compassionate. So, whether you're just realizing what you've lived through, or you've been on this path and you're ready for the next layer of your healing, you are welcome here. This is not about perfection. This is about reclamation.
This is fascinating to me. How did she live to be 101?
Well, I think my theory on it is, so she was born in Latvia. Latvia was invaded by the Russians and she lost her first husband in that whole situation. She lost her father. They were both shot by the Russians. And so she fled with her mother and her brother. And she was lost in sort of the snow for 3 weeks or something. And then they managed to get to Germany and they were in German settlement camps 5 years. And then they got passage and migration status to Australia. And when they landed here, they were in settlement camps in Australia for 2 years, because back then in Australia, you had to pay off your passage, especially your refugee passage, in these camps, and you were taught skills and so forth. So his father did bricklaying and she qualified as a nurse during that time. But she was the head of Hornsby Hospital's nursing unit for 50 something years. The woman is made of steel.
Wow.
You know?
Yeah.
So I think it's the resilience, and also she's starved in the past before, being lost in the snow for 3 or 4 weeks. I said, there's something her body knows and it knows how to do it. So I said, she's not going to go quickly.
Yeah.
And she didn't. So
Wow.
yeah, incredible resilience. The story could probably be a movie. Like I learned more at the eulogy even than I knew, about her resilience and how she had started all over again in Australia with a new husband, had her 3 kids, and they pretty much worked their way to a new life. His father became a qualified teacher and she became a nurse, and then she ended up being the head nurse at one of the most prestigious hospitals in New South Wales.
Fascinating.
So absolute resilience.
Yeah, resilience is the word that came to mind for me. And, I was watching a video of this doctor giving a lecture on the effects of fasting on the body and the effects of fasting on the lessening of dementia and like slowing it down, and how so many things happen in your body that like you're less likely to get cancer, you're more likely to lengthen your time alive. So I'm wondering if maybe that even further pushed that out for her.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, look, I've started a fasting protocol myself because I have diabetes. And so, I was on insulin. My doctor weaned me off insulin, put me on these protocols where I'm intermittent fasting and doing a lot of low carb intake. And of the family, because we have a history, and from South Africa, there's that genetic propensity. And so my mother has it, my brother, there's only one brother who doesn't have it. We 5 siblings, everyone else has it.
Type
It's
2?
Type 2.
Wow.
But I'm probably the one in the family that's taken on the protocols to try and put it into remission.
Yeah.
So I know that I'm doing better than most of my family. I've lost weight and I'm very filled with vitality, energetic, all of these things. But it's because I decided to take on a different approach and wean myself off the medications that they had me on.
That says something for resilience also, because I remember in our pre-chat, I was listening to some of your story and I was like, gosh, the resilience that we could touch on here. And I feel like a part of resilience is adaptability and like thinking outside of the box and being open enough to try something else. And I'm wondering, which we could even use some of this as part of the show and I could clip it in. But
Yeah.
thinking back on your story, I'm wondering if there were points where you were like, fuck it, like nothing else has worked. I'm just going to do this.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, for me, I started going, as I started slowing down work, corporate work,
Hmm.
I started traveling a lot too. And every time I was in Europe, I love Europe. So I go there often, at least once a year or once every second year. And I notice whenever I'm in Europe, I'm super fit, blood sugars are stable, but I'm also walking a lot, right? I don't do buses or any of those. I'm walking from place to place and looking at the architecture and things like that. And also the food in Europe has got certain ways that they produce, like there's no GMO products there, especially the wheat. So I
Yeah.
noticed when I ate bread there, and I don't eat a lot of bread, but when I did eat bread, I was fine. There was
Yeah.
no sugar spikes. There
I
was
feel
nothing.
great.
And I thought, how do I keep this going in Australia?
Hmm.
And I realized that, we don't have the tight rules around our wheat. And so our wheat is a problem in Australia. But then I was like, okay, there's got to be a different way for me to still enjoy, some bread or something. And then I spoke to my GP. I have one of the best GPs. He's very open-minded. He combines Eastern and Western medicine. He's trained in both.
That's
And so
good.
he was like, let's get you off the insulin first. And then we slowly started to introduce, and he said, you just need to take in a lot of vegetables, a lot of protein. And if you want to have bread, make it with something other than flour, almond meal, or anything like that.
Okay.
So that's what I started. And it was really about wanting to have that continuity from my
Hmm.
travels
Very
back
interesting.
here in Australia,
Yeah.
because I was like, I could walk. I mean, I was clocking 25,000 steps a day in Europe
Wow.
because I had so much energy because their food didn't affect me. And I thought there's got to be a way to do this. And so, because one of the things with type 2 diabetes is you're fatigued all the time. You're
Yeah.
tired, and when you're taking medication, it makes you tired too. And I don't like, for me, it's like I'm used to being energetic and accomplishing a lot in a day. And sometimes it's not even always about accomplishing. Sometimes it's just because I live right here on a trail, a walking trail with a creek running through it. I just want to be out in nature. But if I'm tired,
Yeah.
then I can't walk, or I don't have the energy to walk, and I'm like, no, I don't want this in my life. I want to be able to do what I want to do when I want to do it, whatever that is.
Yes, that's such an important point. Like, not only did you take the continuity for your travel and like you made something work for you, but you also decided like this is how I want to feel. This is what feels good. And I think even on my show and the women that I work with, a lot of us are not tapped into what feels good because we've just dismissed it for so long or we've overperformed and just ignored that fact. And I think it's really beautiful how you were like, no, I want to be in nature. I want to be energetic. And thinking back on all of, I mean, you told me a lot of your story, and I was just like, oh my gosh, this
Mm.
woman has been through so much. How did you stay in touch with that part of you that felt things and decided, yes, this is good? Because many women would say that's our intuition, and people ask me all the time, how do I get back in touch with that?
So for me, I think, the story obviously begins back in South Africa, where it was very difficult times growing up in apartheid. But
Mhm.
one of the things I learned really young when I first discovered that this is the environment I'm living in and it doesn't favor me as
Mm.
a person of color,
Yep.
I started to write. And writing has always been an escape. From the age of 7 was when I started to write. I wrote little poems, little short stories about, animals and leaves and things. And I would just make up things, but it was a way to escape. I was also an avid reader. My father read to us when we were very young. And so I became enchanted with books. So the books and the writing were the first levels of escape for me. And it wasn't that I didn't want to know about what was going on in South Africa. It was about knowing what my spirit and soul could handle at any given moment. So I knew that I needed to always find something that would bring that relief or that good feeling, rather than constantly looking there and going, oh my goodness, life is so hard. I have to work so hard to get anywhere, especially here in South Africa. So that started at a very young age. That doesn't mean I didn't go through difficult times. I was an absolute rebel in my teens. I became a political activist, fighting against the government, was tear gas, was whipped. I wasn't jailed, fortunately, but many of my friends were. They never caught me. So I wasn't jailed, but I experienced everything else that the political activists of the time were experiencing. But always, I suppose at the end of the day, I went back to the writing. I would journal. Journaling's been a part of my life, all of my life, and it was a way to get all my feelings out. And then my dad also took us hiking on Table Mountain, which is one of the most beautiful mountains in the world. He would take us hiking as kids. And so I learned about nature and how it could soothe the soul when everything else was calamitous and turmoil around you. We went off into nature. And we did these hikes. We hiked up the mountain. We hiked through the forest. So I learned from a young age what kept me feeling good. And it's been through, I literally have made sure it's been a part of my life, throughout of my life. And then when I came to Australia, you know, adapting to Australia and the new way of life was difficult. Despite the fact that we wanted to leave South Africa, it was difficult to settle in. Migration is not easy. Many people don't realize that. Yeah. It is not easy to leave your home country, to leave everybody that you love, the way of life that you know, whether it's a good or bad way of life, what's familiar to you. And I came to Australia when I was almost 21 years old. I was like a few weeks away from my 21st birthday when we arrived here. So I was an adult already, and I brought with me still my love of writing. So I remember writing pages through the difficulty of migration and how do I adapt to this new country, and I have these newfound freedoms. However, I don't know what to do with them. I don't know how to be with them. Right. So writing my way through that. But that's where I've always gained clarity. I still write to this day. Every single day I write something, especially when I'm confused, especially when I'm traumatized or feeling off kilter. I go to the writing, and I also go to nature, which is why, you know, when I found this home, it was right on the trail. So I literally step out of the gate and I'm on the trail, and the creek is going through, and you can do a long walk around the trail, or you can do a medium walk or a short walk. We've got 3 different walks. And so I get to choose, you know, sometimes at lunchtime I might be stretched for time, so I only have 15 minutes, and I'll do the mid track. Other times I'll do the full track, always with the dog, and I'm surrounded by nature, trees everywhere, the sound of water running. So I've chosen deliberately, I suppose, what works for me. And when I talk to even the people that I work with, the midlife women that I work with, I'm always saying to them, what is the thing? There's a thing. We all have a thing that soothes the soul. For some women, it's taking a bath with a nice warm cup of tea or whatever. Like, my question is always, why aren't you doing that more often? Why are you doing so much of the stress stuff?
Yep.
Why are you doing the stress stuff? Because life is stressful anyway. We're juggling so many competing priorities, you know. And at my age, I'm sort of late 50s now. But at my age, I'm now in that cycle where you caring for aging parents. So you're managing your own life. You've got kids that are growing up and coming through, and then you're taking care of aging parents as well. There's a lot on my plate. But so that's why I deliberately choose to find the spaces where I can just reset the soul, you know.
Yeah.
And then the other side of resilience is, so it's about finding what's going to help you stay resilient. And you find your little pieces of joy, or your one thing, or your 2 things. For me, it's 2: writing, walking in nature. But then the other thing, I suppose, in many ways, if I think about it, what choice did I have? People always say, oh gosh, you've been through so much. I'm like, well, there was only 2 ways it could go. I either fall victim to the circumstance and it breaks me, or I find a solution. And sometimes the solution didn't come as quickly as I may have liked it to. I was definitely in that bucket of doom, diving under the doona, crying my eyes out, especially when my relationship with my daughter's father ended. There was no plan in my life to be a single parent. So when that ended, when I was pregnant, I was pregnant with her when it ended. So it literally started at 4 months. I was 4 months pregnant, and that was the end of the relationship. He had an affair, was the end of the relationship. It's like, okay, so I did cry. Yes, I did. Absolutely. Didn't want to come out from under that doona, but there's a life growing in me. And I'm like, you got to get it together, because what are you going to pass on to this child?
Mm,
You
yep.
know, I knew I had to get it together, and it wasn't easy. And one of the first things I did was, I don't know how to get it together. So who can help me? I went to see a psychologist, right? That was I knew that I didn't know where to start, and I didn't know how to do it on my own. And
Yep.
so it's like, sometimes in life, you got to go and ask for help.
Yes.
You got to throw the pride aside and say, I don't know where to start. So look at the resources around you. There are so many, right? We have coaches in everything, life coaching. We have psychologists, we have psychiatrists, we have spiritual counselors, people everywhere. So find out who resonates or what resonates with you, and move in that direction. And it's not always easy to do, because sometimes that also requires a monetary resource. And I was like, because I lost the house because he walked away. He emptied out the bank accounts, taking my
No,
money
he did
that
not. He
he
took
did.
everything. I'm so sorry. And you were pregnant. Who does that?
Well, this is the thing. I mean, the lesson there was that it's so interesting. I look back, and my father and I have always been very close, because Dad was the one that nurtured my love of books and reading. And so we grew very close as I was growing up. And even when we migrated here, very, very close. And so when I met him, my daughter's father, my father's reaction was visceral, and it was a hard no.
Wow. And so you did you take that into consideration, or were you just like, I love this person?
No. Well, yeah, I was stubborn.
Oh.
Had to learn the hard way. It was a very painful time when I first started going out with him, because my father's reaction as soon as he met him was, no, this guy's not the right guy for you. But I was like, yeah, well, you just being an overprotective dad and all of this type of thing. My father and I had a falling out, and I would go over to visit their home, and my dad would walk out. Like, this went on for a year.
Wow.
I was devastated because I was so close to him. But when I look back, we eventually healed that, because I was with my ex for like almost 10 years, right? So this is in the early stages of the relationship. My dad's reaction was no. He learned to accept him, but he was never comfortable. He was always like, I don't know what it is about this person, but he's not the right person for you. I feel like there was probably a lot of healing that I had to do, and I attracted this guy because I had my own self-esteem issues, a lot of it from South Africa, and being told 1,000 times over, you're not good enough. You're a woman of color. Here's your limitations. Here's where you can't go. Here's where you can go. So, you battle with that within yourself, and you don't realize it. I didn't realize it. But as I started going through the counseling after that relationship, I recognized that we were primed to be drawn to each other, him and I. There was lessons to learn. There was mirrors, effects that had to happen. So I don't regret it, because I got my daughter out of that. And, she's been the greatest joy in my life, but also the being that gave me the strength to walk away from it. Because I was like, you know what? I'm putting up with this rubbish. I'm not bringing this to my child. And that was what ended the relationship. When he had the affair, I was so clear and just walked away from everything and lost everything in the process. But I was like, I'm starting over again. I don't care if it's from rock bottom. I'm going to climb my way up. I'm going to give her a better life. And I had the support of my parents. It was interesting when that happened, when the relationship fell apart. My father called me and said, "You coming home?" He picked me up, took me home. Not once did he say, "I told you so." He just nurtured me through that time. There was never, and to this day, my dad has never said, "I told you so." He
That's a
just
good thing.
always, good dad. And I realized, sometimes you got to pay attention to the people who know you and know your spirit and know what's good for you, because sometimes we can't see clearly, right?
Yep.
But as I said, I don't regret it, because I have a beautiful daughter out of that relationship, you know, and we've traveled the world together. She's an adult now, and we're still very, very close. Something beautiful came out of that, you know, and I've gone past the stage of even blaming my ex. I can look at where I attracted that.
Yeah.
And I think that's another part of resilience. I know people don't always see that, but if you can own your part in something, you can heal a lot quicker. Because when you're looking outside of yourself and you're blaming everyone, like I did blame him for a long time, you're stuck. You stay stuck in the cycle. And in the end, you become a victim of that whole situation, whatever had happened. And I remember when I found out, and I was probably about 6 months pregnant, because they were obviously watching me through the pregnancy because there had been domestic violence. When he left, it was violent. So they were watching me, trying to make sure the baby was okay all through the pregnancy. They could see. One day I went for one of my scans, and they were looking and just making sure she was healthy. But I had this intuition it was a girl, and the radiographer, whoever was doing the scan, said, "Oh, I can see the sex of the baby." And I said, "It's a girl, isn't it?" And she said, "Yes, it's a girl." And it was in that moment when I had it confirmed that it was a girl, I made a decision that I wasn't going to be a victim of what had happened, and she wasn't going to be a victim of the world that she was coming into in my environment. And that was when I really became super focused on turning life around, you know, really elevating through the counseling, I fought with the counselor at times because some of what she was asking me, I hated.
This is rubbish. Why did I hire you?
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to confront your part in something. It's very difficult. But she did ask me, she only let me sort of have the tears and the blame for probably 2 sessions, I would say. And maybe by the 3rd or 4th one, it was when she asked me the most important question I think anyone's ever asked me in my entire life, because it was the question that turned my life around. She said to me, "So where were you in your spirit and your being that you attracted this? You're an intelligent woman. How did you attract this into your life? This person who was so awful to you, who took everything from you." She said, "What was going on with you?" And I was so angry when she asked me the question. My reaction was one of anger.
Yeah.
And she said to me, "I can see by your face you're about to explode." But she said, "Before you do that, I want you to go back to what you know. I want you to go back home, and I want you to write about this, write about everything that's coming up. Just me asking you the question." And so I did that. And that was when I looked, as I was writing, I started to see, oh my God, there was the self-esteem issues for me. There were many things unresolved within South Africa, and the harm that had done to my own soul. Being whipped, being tear gassed, all of the stuff. You don't even know it's traumatizing you. It's hitting you from various angles because you're so much in survival mode.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't notice that it's happening to you, that it's stripping away at your soul and at your spirit. But when she asked the question and I started to write, and I wrote for days, pages and pages and pages, and I read what I was writing, and I was like, there's a pattern here. And then when I went back the next week, we started to work through that, because I had identified all the stuff that was driving me. Why didn't I leave? It wasn't like he was always like, so we had 5 good years, but then the last 4, we were together for 9 and a bit years. They were not great years. Yep. We broke up a couple of times. I kept going back. I was like, what the heck was this all about? You know?
Yes, I do. I know very intimately what you're speaking of here.
So then I was like, okay, there is something to look at. And then I was like, hang on a minute. I want the baby to come into this. And that's why, for me, it was just about then moving forward. And I did many, many things to move forward. There was the psychologist. I started to take inventory of my life. What did I need to do now to survive? Because I had this massive debt. The house sold at a loss. He walked away. Bank came after me. There was a debt over my head. How do I start? And I've just had a baby. So I started to write out, who do I talk to first? I need to make more money. That was when I came up with, I need to talk to the people that hire people, recruiters, hiring people. So everything for me became it was like a strategy or a roadmap. I have to do this in order to make sure that I'm not a victim in this circumstance and that my daughter has a good life. So that was the driving factor. So in some ways, people say you're resilient, but it was, sometimes it wasn't even resilience. It was just pure will and motivation of wanting to give her a different life. I didn't want my scars and my baggage to pass on to my daughter. That was really the motivating factor through everything, but it also benefited me in the end because I grew through that and I realized in the end that I was actually doing it for both of us. I was healing for both of us, for me because I needed to, but also because I wanted to be a really good mother to her and I wanted her to have a really good life. I didn't want her to be a victim of being abandoned by one parent. Now, she still has had some issues. Obviously, when your father abandons you, that's a hard thing.
Yeah.
But fundamentally, she's been raised by the village, by my parents, myself, my siblings, all the people around us. So she's had that village raising, and she's a very well-adjusted, confident young woman,
That's so
and I'm proud
beautiful.
of her.
I bet you are. Proud of you also.
Yeah.
This is so good. Okay. Gosh, I have so many questions. So in a minute, I want to kind of segue into like what you do and leaving the corporate world. But I had a question come up when you were talking, and I feel like you had your dad, you reached out and found this therapist. So that's a really great support system. And it was very resourceful to be like, okay, I need help. I can't do this on my own. And you said something really important. I feel that sometimes you do need to pay attention to what people are saying, the people who care about you, the people who know you and know your spirit. So
Yeah.
this is a nuance here because a lot of women that I work with, so by extension, I believe women who might be listening to this show, they might be looking to the wrong, and I say this with air quotes, wrong people and listening to what they're saying. Well, they say I'm a piece of shit. They say I'm useless. I'm wondering if you have any words to share here about like who do you listen to and how do you know it's the right person to listen to?
Well, if someone is calling you a piece of shit, that's a sign already that that's the wrong person to listen to, because someone who holds you in that space of love and want to see you thrive is never going to say that to you. Right? That's the first thing. So if someone is telling you that you can't do it or you're not worthy or whatever language they caveat it in, then that's not the right person to listen to in the first place, because the people who really want you to thrive, even if they see you heading down a road that's potentially could be a mistake, they're going to say it to you in the most gentle way. They're going to say, I have a concern for you. Or, they might know that you, someone who, for example, you're an artist, but suddenly you're pivoting because you're driven by money and you're going, I'm going to head down this road because this road's going to pay me money. But the person knows you. They know your spirit. They know that you thrive in creativity. And now you're heading down this very linear road that's got nothing to do with your spirit. If someone's a good friend, they're going to say, are you sure? Because I know that this is what makes you light up. Let's figure out a way to do this so that your spirit is lit up, but also in a way that you can make money. Someone's going to come up with a solution like that. That's a lot of what I do with some of the women I work with. Once they share with me what really brings them joy, then we start doing strategies. Okay, maybe you need to do this career here for a little minute, but we need to work on developing this one, because what you don't want to do is put yourself in financial stress. So I never encourage people to walk away from anything. Like, you don't just walk away from a job and then suddenly go, I'm heading in this direction, and there's no financial backing behind you. That is going to put you under a level of stress where you're never going to be able to negotiate for your true joy and your true worth. So I'm like, no. Okay, now I know what lights you up. Okay, so maybe we have to do this role for another 6 months, or maybe we do it part-time so that there's steady income coming in, and we start to feed that resource into what is really great for you, what is really going to make you want to jump out of bed. That is kind of the work that I like to do, right? And that's what I do with most of the women that I do. Some men, but mostly women. Because what I've seen is men tend to be very decisive about the direction they're going. But
Yeah.
because, they've been encouraged from boyhood in that space. But women, we've not necessarily been encouraged to pursue certain dreams, certain passions. So I would say to people, be careful about who you're taking advice from. If someone, and you know what, you know it in your waters. You actually know it in your waters. The moment a comment is made to you, you will have a reaction.
Yes.
Sometimes it's here. It like will hit you really hard, or you just get this uncomfortable feeling in your gut. Something will happen in your body, and you will know that that person's intent is actually not good. They're not speaking from a good place. They're not there to really see you grow. They're not there. There could be a level of envy. There could be a level of someone hasn't got the courage to step out and go after their dreams, so they're trying to discourage you from going after yours. You know, many, many things drive people. Whatever it is, you're going to feel it. And when someone says something to you from a good place, they will always, always try and work with the positives that exist within you and then help you in the direction that you need to go. Also, people who really know and love you will help you. You know, they might open a door. They might listen. Like I know people who've never ever said anything to other people. I've done this myself, but I've worked with certain clients and I go, God, this woman would be great in this corporation. And then I'll ring up my ex-boss and go, I've got someone for you. Because when you hear something in someone and you see the joy and you will open a door for someone. That's what humanity does. That's what generosity does. You know, people who are constantly basically shitting on your dreams.
Yep.
Steer clear. They don't have your best interest at heart. Whatever the reasons, you know, you can have a level of compassion, because I always say there's something driving that person. Why would you shit on someone else's dreams?
Yeah.
Right? So there's something insecure within them that's driving, and I will have compassion for them to a point, but I set a boundary immediately. Immediately, I set my boundary and I'm like, okay, you someone that I might go out and have a dance with, you someone I might go out and maybe have a lunch with or a drink, but I'm no longer sharing my deepest dreams with you.
Yes. And I'm not taking your advice, because your primary goal here is not to see me light up.
No, that's right.
That's what I hear you saying, is the people who love you, they will want to see you light up. They will want to
I
see.
absolutely want to see you light up, and they'll do what they can to make that happen. Like in my case, when I started over, my parents don't come from immense wealth or anything like that. And we had migrated to Australia. And so we're in this new country and we're still building from having to leave everything behind in South Africa. But what they did was they helped take care of my daughter. So I could educate myself. I could go and study and learn and grow. So sometimes the help isn't going to come in terms of they might open a door for you, or they may have money to help fund something that you're doing. They give you their time. They take care of your child while you go and study for that thing, that Reiki course or whatever it is that you want to do. They go, you know what? I'm going to take care of your baby for you every Saturday. That's what my parents did.
Wow.
That's what friends of mine did. You know, they nurtured me. They couldn't give me money. They were struggling like I was, but they gave me time, and they gave my daughter caring to free me up to go and do what I needed to do to grow so that I could, you know, succeed and create that life.
Okay. Remind me again what you went to school for, or your
I so my education was psychology and languages and literature. So literature has always been a part of my life. So I majored in English literature and English, and my minor was in psychology. So finished at Monash University, never ever, or felt like I never ever used my degree, because I ended up in information technology, right? Like,
Oh, wow.
how? But what happened there was that I noticed that there was a thread, and this is something I share with a lot of my clients. I noticed even in my corporate career, because I did go for the role in my earlier life to make money. It was all about being driven by money, because I had to survive. I had to pay off a $50,000 debt. I had to find a new home for my daughter. And so for me, it was, I need this amount of money. How do I make it? And so at the time, corporate information technology was on the rise. It was paying mega bucks. Landed myself a role in there. What I did notice in my corporate career was that I was always the person that ended up doing a lot of the writing. So every time there was presentation packs when we were delivering software, or we were putting up a business case because we needed the stakeholders to sponsor the program, I was the one doing the writing. And I noticed, and this is what I've said to some of my clients, sometimes you don't end up doing the thing that you really love, but you notice there's a thread around it. And I noticed that writing was always a thread, even in corporate, even when I was doing the job that I suppose didn't really light me up. But the other side of that job was I was in people development, and that did light me up. I've always loved working with people. I've always loved helping people. So I did a lot of that. I was building teams. I wasn't the person that knew what software was better. That was up to the developers and the techies and the experts and the geeks. I was not that person, but I knew how to run the teams. So that's where I ended up. But when I looked at the thread, when I decided to exit corporate, which happened around menopause for me, because I went through a rough menopause, I was like, what can I do? I'm leaving corporate, but what is the thing that I'm going to do that's going to make me feel great every day? Because the stress of corporate was exacerbated that menopausal symptoms for me. So the insomnia was off the charts, the mood swings were off the charts, the sweats, everything was awful. And I was ill a lot of the time as well. And so it wasn't a very pleasant experience. And I knew that the stress of corporate was no longer tenable for me, But when I did my little self-evaluation, I was like, well, what is it? And then I was like, you know what? Writing is still there. It was there from age 7 when you first figured out apartheid and what that meant. And it's been the thread. And even in corporate, it was the thread. The bosses used to get me to do the presentations, me to do the writing. One of my bosses was Dutch. So his command of the language here in Australia he struggled, and he would make me do all his email correspondence out to the teams and direct and all of that. So people saw very quickly that I loved words, and that I loved working with it, and I loved using it to communicate. And so they always gave me the opportunities to do that. So that was my thread. So when I decided I was leaving corporate, it was like, well, I've already got something. I've got writing that I love, people, and I had also gotten myself many, many great jobs through my writing, through tweaking my resume. And I then started helping people do the same. So I already had something. And so I transitioned full-time into this because I had it, I loved it, I was good at it, and it was helping lots of people.
So tell us what it is that you do now. Like, what is your title of what you do?
So I'm a career transition coach and a resume writer, LinkedIn profile writer. So basically career documents writer. So I do resumes, I do LinkedIn, I do people's cover letters. Sometimes when we have to put a presentation to forward, if they want to go for a role and they want to be the candidate that stands out, I encourage them to do. I say, go to the company, have a look at what their pain points are. When you go for an interview, have a small presentation ready. Let's write that up. And you address their pain points. I'm telling you, 99% of the time they get the job because they've come with a different angle. Yeah. So I'm always about approaching a role with a different angle. Find out what the company's pain point is and address it. Try to address it in the interview. And if you can present it on a PowerPoint, or some slides, even better. They won't forget you as a candidate.
Yeah.
And so that's the way I work. So it's career coaching, resume writing. And then I also do business copywriting for some small businesses. People know I love words. I weave stories. It's fundamentally so cool. What I do.
Yeah.
So
now you get to do what you love every day.
Every day.
And you don't get burned out on it.
No, look, there has been times where I've sometimes worked longer, but I don't do it as a habit. So where I will give someone extra time, and I've done this even when I'm traveling, because I'm a big traveler. I travel every year. That's the passion. Once or twice when I've traveled, I've had clients reach out saying, I've just landed a job interview and I'm scared. That's the only time I will allow them into my holiday, because that is urgent. Yeah. They might have the job interview on Friday. We're talking on a Tuesday. They've texted me or they've emailed me. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to give them our time. So I have coached people from the Sacré-Cœur in Paris doing interview practice. I've sat on the steps there practicing with them.
Wow.
But for me, that's not work. That's just joy. That's just, because most of the time what's happened out of that is they've landed the role. They've never forgotten that I've given them the hour while I was traveling, or 2 hours, or if they need 3 sessions or whatever, they refer their people to me. So the business just continues to repeat and grow because people refer people. Because I think sometimes you just have to, I know when to not be available, but I also know what matters. So with the writing side of it, they know if you're going to apply for a role, you need to give me a lead time.
Yeah.
But I also know that interview practices can be unpredictable because they could be applying and then suddenly I'm away. They land the interview. They need help. They need the practice. So I make myself available. And it's, to me, it's nothing to me to actually spend that time with that person and get them across the line, get the nerves under control, build the confidence. And it's been very good for my business. It's been very good for repeat business as well, because they come back every time they got to go for the next promotion, they come back. And
This
so
is such an interesting niche. Like, it never would have occurred to me to get help with resumes and preparing for interviews. That's so cool.
yeah, well, you know, most of us can't see ourselves clearly, right? When we perform, especially in interviews, people don't know what they don't know. Now, I have hired for some of the biggest, when I was in corporate and in information technology, I hired for some of the biggest programs that were ever run in Australia. We're talking hundreds of millions. So I have hired so many people over the 22 years that I was in that role. I know exactly what they need to give a hiring person. And it's not the same old boring story. It is, tell me how you are going to contribute to my project. And the only way you can do that is to use your achievements from your past work and sell me on the fact that you've contributed before you come here. That means you can do it again. Most people don't know how to articulate that. They especially don't know how to articulate it in a way that is sharp and succinct. Because when you're in an interview, you have to be sharp and succinct, and most people don't know that. They waffle. They get nervous, so they waffle. And
Let me go off on a tangent over here.
That's right. And they
Yeah.
don't recognize that it's a two-way street. So the interview is interviewing you. And one of the big things they're trying to determine is, can you deliver a message in a sharp and succinct way? Because we might have customers where you can't waffle on because the customer's already irritated. So you need to be sharp and succinct. So they're testing you for that, number one. The other one is, can you think on your feet? They're going to throw you a curveball question, right? So can you think on your feet, and can you come back with an answer that's relevant? Because people don't always come back with answers that's relevant. They go off on a tangent, as you say. Someone's asking them about project delivery and they going off on a customer service tangent. And the interview is going to go, you didn't understand the question, right?
Yeah.
And so there is an art to it. And you don't know what you don't know until you practice with someone. And you need to practice with someone who knows how it works. And one of the ways, because one of the things I'm seeing, AI is starting to infiltrate on my business in terms of the writing, because people are going to ChatGPT. But where they can't infiltrate on my business is in that interview practice. That's still the part of my business that continues to thrive, because AI can't do the nuance human with you.
Yeah.
It can throw the questions out at you, but it cannot see your body language. It cannot clearly understand what you mean by this answer that you're saying. And so a human is still required to become really good at interviewing. And so that's where, you know, I'm starting to pivot now and move more, even more so in that direction. At the end of the day, you can have the best resume, you can have the best LinkedIn, best whatever. If you don't know how to perform in an interview, you don't get the job. Very specialized skill. And I love it. I actually get to see in real time.
Yeah.
Someone go from being super nervous to being quite confident by the time we've, and at most, and I won't say all of the clients, but most of my clients, it only takes 3 sessions. The first session, they're really nervous. I'm listening to them. I'm giving feedback. The second session, they're starting to gain confidence because I've given the feedback. And I always record my sessions with my clients and then send it to them.
Yep. That's
because
good.
I'm like, you don't need to come back to me.
Yep.
If you watch what you've done and you've taken the feedback I've given, you golden, you know. And then by the third session, they acing it, you know. And then when they go for the interview, they're ready. they're ready. And for me, that's a joy to watch someone transform literally before my eyes. I love it.
You just completely, like, if anyone is watching this and they're wondering if they need your service, like, you just did it for yourself. You just succinctly told me what it is that you do and why it's needed and why AI isn't going to be able to do it. And you're like, here's your problem. Here's why I'm the answer. Boom. And you're going to succeed. So, okay, this brings up a question for me because, I have a past of trauma. I lived through narcissistic abuse and borderline personality disorder in my parent and things like that. And I found that when I stepped out into adulthood, number one, the oversharing and the just like babbling on and on, oh my God, it was awful. But I didn't feel competent at anything. And I'm listening to you and I'm like, my God, like she's so competent and just like, I feel like I could listen to you talk all day. Like I could learn so much from you.
Thank you.
I'm wondering if there was ever a point after what you went through where you just, I mean, you came to a whole new country. Was there ever a moment when you looked around and you were just like, I don't know how to do anything. This is so intimidating.
Well, I mean, I haven't always felt that way, right? So when I came to Australia, people started asking me about South Africa, and that was triggering and traumatizing. So
Oh,
there was moments where because did my second year of university here in Australia, and people back then started to know what was going on in South Africa. So there was a lot of sanctions against the country. There were people marching in protest against apartheid in South Africa and all of this type of thing. And so they bombarded me. Like I went to uni and my fellow students would bombard me, and I did not want to talk about that because I'd just come out of it. I'd lived through it for X many years. I myself had been a political activist. And so I did feel like I didn't know what, and I did hide away. I would go to uni and I would hide away. I wouldn't engage in a lot of the social things for a while. But that's also not me. I am someone that needs to be connected to people, and I knew that. So then I started going to some of the Latin festivals, and because I was learning Spanish at the time and so on, and realized that you choose what you share and you choose what you don't share. And for me, if I kept repeating the same stories over and over about the trauma, it was just literally taking it back into the spirit all the time. So I started to focus on what I'd survived and how I'd survived, because that's a more positive story. That I developed strategies, I developed coping mechanisms. I'd gone to see a counselor. I was never ashamed to admit that I'd gone to a psychiatrist, a psychologist. Like, and I would say to my fellow people, if you're going through stuff, go and find the help. Never be ashamed to say, I need help. But also be mindful of not overburdening people around you with the same story over and over, because that's not just you necessarily burdening them, it's you burdening yourself. It's like
yeah.
literally saying the story back to yourself over and
Yeah.
over, and you don't get a chance to really heal. So it's discretion in the end, isn't it? You figure out what's okay to share. Like if someone comes to you and say, this has happened to me, I was racially bullied on a bus, and someone came and said that to me, then I would say, I totally know what you feel like, because I've been there and I've been called those names. And here's what I've done to have it not go into my soul and spirit. So I will acknowledge that that's happened to them. And they know that I know, because the moment I tell them I come from South Africa, apartheid, they go, oh my God, yeah, what am I talking about, you know? But you can never discount people's experiences because it hurts them in that moment. And then I'm like, this is what I had to do over a period of time. And I always say to people, it's been over a period of time. It was never just a miracle healing. It was concerted effort on my part to shed that, to shed being a victim, to shed constantly being traumatized by the same stuff. It was a concerted effort on my part. It still is. It still is to this
Yeah.
day.
I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you said that. Because to me, it's like constant learning and growing, and like we evolve over time. And so I don't know, every time I have one of these interviews, I feel like I'm learning just as much from you guys as our audience is. Because I'm just like, this is fascinating. There's so many things out there that we don't know. There's so many other ways to view the world. And a million and one more than that, even when you think that you've heard so many. So I'm really glad that you said like it's still an effort. Like, you're still growing. Yeah, you're still developing.
Yeah,
That's beautiful.
still growing. I saw this years and years ago. And it made so much sense to me, and I still live by it. The Chinese have an old proverb that says, fall down 7 times, get up 8. That's it. That is it in a nutshell.
Yeah.
You know, we fall all the time. We fall down. We have moments where we just can't cope with life. But as long as you get up more times than you fall down 7, get up 8, you will always find a way to move forward.
I love that so much. Okay, let me see. So I try to make sure that I'm thinking of like the listeners, anything else that they might be asking as they're listening to this, things that might pop into their head listening to you talk, but really you're so well spoken.
Thank you.
Is there anything else that you would share that you haven't yet?
Well, I think the only thing I always actually usually like to end most of the podcasts I've been on is I say to people, don't overwhelm yourself. So this applies to career, it applies to health and fitness, it applies to financial health. If you're trying to improve things, you take one step at a time. You know, I've always only ever taken one step at a time, because what I saw in my life, I saw the patterns, was the moment I tried to chew that elephant, I became overwhelmed. So it's like, okay, what's my next best step? And that's the only question to ever ask yourself. What is the next best step in this moment for me? And for someone who's trying to change their career, for example, it could be, I need to go and read my resume that I haven't read in 20 years because I need to figure out how am I going to make it appropriate for the market. That might be the only step you take for this day or for the rest of the week, because it might take you a while to go through the resume and go, oh my God, all this stuff is like outdated. I need to get it updated. Then maybe next week's next best step is I need to find a resume writer. I've tried to write it. I don't know what to put on it. I'm going to go find someone who can help me. And maybe the next step is, okay, now I'm going to need to go to the job search portals and go see what's out there. Start putting the feelers out, applying. You try to take all the steps at once, you literally will not succeed, because your brain can't take in that overwhelm and it'll stop you.
Yes.
So my final words is always take the next best action, and only one action, so that you don't trip the brain. Can't cope.
Yeah, for sure. And I find that you'll be like in this box of I can't see any options.
That's
And
right.
there's so many options, but you have to start with one. And when you're thinking of the very end step, it's like there's too much around you. You can't see the forest for the trees.
Exactly. Yep.
That's
That's the secret to success. Next best action only.
and get back up that 8th time. I do want to say, in case I might clip this in the beginning, but just in case. So we're here with Wendy Alexander today. I completely did not introduce you in the beginning. This conversation has been so good. I've felt so in the moment with you. I'm very grateful that you shared your time with us today. I'm wondering if you would,
Pleasure.
yeah, same. Do you want to take a minute to talk about anything that you have, like your website or an offering, a book you're working on, anything like that?
People can find me at happycareerhub.com. That's probably the best place. Or if people are on LinkedIn, my LinkedIn handle is Wendy A. Alexander. So I've got my middle initial in there, 2 A's. That's where I do a lot of freebie videos, posts, just advice and tips on how to succeed in the career space or where to start. But if they wanted to reach out and have a chat, I usually, on my website, you can book a 15-minute slot with me. And sometimes it's just about defining the direction you might want to go.
Yeah.
I like to push people in the right direction. Sometimes they come back to me and we work together, and other times they don't, and I'm fine with that. As long as I get to send them on their way in the direction that's going to light them up.
That's so good. I just feel like you're such an amazing person. I want to make
Thank
sure
you.
to say that. Like your heart, your soul is so beautiful. You just radiate. You're so kind.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Many people have been kind to me. So, it's really about paying it forward. If we all do that, the world would be a better place.
Wouldn't it? Wouldn't it? Yeah, I completely agree.
Thank you. It was wonderful chatting with you, Ashana.
You too. Thank you. Truly.
All
Soon.
right. Bye.
Thanks for spending time in the Reclamation Room. Be sure to follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if this supported you, consider sharing it or leaving a review. You're not alone. and your reclamation is sacred.